will bring us to about $2 billion in debt if we pass these measures.
How much is that per capita in the DPS Disney?
I don't know that number. I can figure that out.
It's very high.
It is super
and
high.
I'm not recalling that number.
Yes.
And that is of concern to me.
Yes, and I think overall I'm asking everyone, all the citizens, to be more critical about how dollars are spent in the school
Yes.
district, because most folks don't realize that we have over $1 billion budget, if you include federal grants and everything that comes in, and that we have more properties that we manage than the city and county of Denver. So we're in many ways a larger government in some aspects, 11,000 employees. And some folks ask me, well, you're just on a committee to talk about schools. I say, no, actually we oversee the budget, the superintendent, we oversee teachers, there's so much more. And I would like for us to be held accountable much more by the taxpayer, because you're really paying the bill for this.
Arturo, the next statistic we've heard sponsored by the school board, is that correct? DPS school board. How many people are on the board with DPS?
Yeah, there are 7 members of the Denver Public School Board, 5 districts, and then there are 2 at-large members.
And then what was the vote in referring the ballot initiative?
The vote was 5-2 in referring the ballot initiative to the voters. And this is interesting because usually, traditionally in all school districts, a bond initiative doesn't go forward unless you have unanimity of the board, because of the resources that we take to pay. Like Mr. Checki over here, he's a very good consultant. The money that we're paying out to pay for the campaign to pass this is really it's a high cost again too to the taxpayer, and so you usually want unanimity from all folks. Particularly, you want unanimity from those that represent the districts. And it would have been great if we had that unanimity. I think we can get that next year. We can run a better bond where everyone can get behind it, everyone can vote for it, be more equitable, and you'd have a 7-0 vote.
Any questions for Tyler or Arturo?
I have a question about the charter schools. I mean, they're publicly owned, and you said run by private, for-profit companies.
Well, not all of them are for-profit. They are non-profit companies, but private nonetheless. Many times Colorado requires that all of the non-profit entities that work on charters form a non-profit board. And so then I don't have accountability over a charter school after it's approved by us, our school board. Then it is accountable, the day-to-day operations and everything that happens, to a private board, a board that is not on a non-profit entity. But
Are there some for-profit charter schools that are part of DPS?
Sure. Look at Edison Learning. Look at White Hat. Look at Mosaica. There's a long list of companies that are involved. Usually what they do is they help form the nonprofit, and then what the nonprofit that they help form does is purchase their services back as consulting. So then they get that contract, essentially.
I did want to clarify something. I mean, you had mentioned that somehow I'm funded by CPS. That's not true.
Okay.
We're a separate campaign entity that's funded by private citizens who give donations to a campaign. I just didn't want anyone thinking that somehow public dollars was being used to fund a campaign effort.
Tyler, can you name some of those funders?
Say that again?
Can you name some of those funders?
We're reporting this week, so we have a lot of funders, we have a lot of small contributors, so it'll be available on the same schedule that everybody else files.
When is it? Next week, you said?
I think the 15th is when the next filing is due to the Secretary of State's office. We file with, so you go to the Secretary of State's page, not to Denver, because you file now with the tracer of the Secretary of State's office.
Yes, sir.
I have a question about the charter school aspect, which may have nothing to do with these bond issues or with these ballot issues. You mentioned one aspect of some charter schools are privately run, okay? But there's another aspect of charter schools which may not even be true, that the charter school can cherry pick who attends the school. Is that a true statement? And my concern is that I think or my fear is, which may not be valid in this case, is that we're being asked to throw more money to schools that cherry pick the students that they want, with the students that maybe take more care actually having less money. Is that true for 3A as well as 3B? Or?
It's true for both. 3A will go evenly per student, including the students that are at charter schools. I do believe that charter schools are set up to selectively pick their students. There are two types of charter schools to me. The alternative charter schools that started out in the 90s serving those kids who could not be served, those kids who were homeless, the kids who were coming out of the criminal justice system, the kids who had dropped out 3 or 4 times. And those schools have functioned very well to supplement and to help the public school system serve those kids that we couldn't. But now that the public system is catching up in terms of learning to serve those students, what you've seen is a proliferation of the elite charter schools that are more creaming off the top of those students that have high test scores, that already have high parent involvement, and the students that don't have the high test scores or aren't lucky enough to have 2 parents at home or the level of parent involvement of others, those students are being shown to the public schools. And so what you have is a drain of resources where they're basically creaming off the top.
So why wouldn't that be a concern for 3A too?
So, actually, Dave, this is a whole different issue, and I want to do another town hall on this because I think it's become a little bit controversial even within the Democratic Party. But I don't want to get it intertwined with the bond issues. I think your assertion is correct.
Yeah.
But I do think this is an important topic on which we need to have more conversation so that everybody understands and ask intelligent questions and get them answered. I think it'd be great to have a couple of different school board members who are on different sides as well present and have that discussion. And I have that's a plan of mine. I just need to find enough people willing to do it. And I'd like to actually do it across the city instead of just my district, because I think it's a bigger issue than even just Senate District 32.
And I would like to clarify, though, I think it is a mixed issue. And, I've identified $187 million that are going to go to the elite charter schools. So it is a question, if you're voting for this, if you're going to agree to that and allow your public officials to use your taxpayer money in that form. And I would love to debate, but unfortunately the
Why are you for 3A then?
3A it's basically because it's a lifeboat, a life preserver. I mean, we are so desperate for funding on that one. We can run 3A next year if it failed this year. We could run it both the 3A, the bond and the mill levy next year as well. The last point I wanted to make is that the president of the school board will not debate me on this. She has refused to, and I wish she would.
I think that's it's a bigger issue.
Right, have people discuss the different issues in education and accountability and performance. But I do also want to say, in defense of the state, interestingly, one of the things I've learned since being in the legislature is that it used to be that schools were funded about 60% by property taxes. And then as the Gallagher Amendment got passed and other amendments got passed, property taxes declined, and now the state funds 60% of schools. So the local governments no longer are the predominant funders of school. And that's why, because the state, as legislators, we don't have the ability to raise taxes to meet our needs. That's why we have such conflict at the state in terms of education and Medicaid funding and things conflicting for our dollars, because schools are no longer supported by local property taxes like they were back 50 or 60 years ago. And so what Arturo said is correct. And I think Tyler alluded to this as well, we do need, based on a study done out of the University of Denver, a systemic fix to our tax situation, because we are at risk of running out of funds other than for Medicaid and education by 2030, I think it is. And so hopefully you'll see the governor and other people start building public will to redesign our whole tax system, so that if we are going to have to be funding schools, then we need to be sure we have enough funds with which to do that. Or could we switch it back and have more come from property taxes? So I think that's another discussion hopefully you'll see as we go forward. But I would like us to, I just wanted to tell you that we'd give you guys more money if we had it, we just don't. Or are there any other questions for either Tyler or Arturo?
Yeah,
Josh.
real quick, maybe I already touched on this. Does like the expenditures under 3A change if the bond's not passed?
No. Sure
They're
don't.
independent of each other.
It may just be how they're allocated, right? You're giving us more money and then how it's going to be allocated in terms of which projects. So I believe, there are some arguments that the technology is integrated or the early childhood education, but there are ways to expand capacity. There are ways to create a better building than the semi-permanent cottages that they've talked about under this bond. That's another issue that we're looking at, some subpar, non-permanent facilities that will go for early childhood education. I'm not sure if taxpayers have been able to study that issue enough to know whether they want to pay for non-permanent cottages for preschool kids.
So the answer is yes, it has to change. There has to be a change. And you said that no, and then you said that the allocation would have to change. The allocation is entirely how funds are distributed. And I think what's important, just to recap some of the pieces here, charter schools have to have a lottery, okay, to pick who. They don't have like an application process where it's not like Grayland or something like that, where you have to have these specific test scores and then your tests aren't certain. And so I just want to make sure we understand that because of a bill that Senator Hudak had passed in the legislature, which requires that all charter schools be public schools, okay? And I think that you can start to try and fudge that issue, but that is state law. And that also means that they have to receive bond dollars and mill dollars just like every other school because they're serving kids in the DPS system. Charter schools serve as a whole. You take all the charters in the city, they serve 73% minority. They serve 75% free and reduced lunch. They serve the same student population, but those parents took initiative to try and find something that suited the learning pattern of their kids. I have 3 different kids. They all learn differently. They may not all learn the same way in the same school. And to have some choices, which I know is controversial and look forward to that, and their parents who are on this campaign, who are distributing literature and yard signs every single day on this campaign, because they're so passionate about what some of the options that DPS is providing, the same options that have increased the student population, and what that's doing for their kids. And to deny the bond, to vote down the bond, will arrest that progress. And what you will see is, even though DPS has been making great strides to close the achievement gap, and has much more to do, that growth is severely disrupted if you take a substantial need that was identified by DPS and is put to the voters. You vote that down, the chilling effect that it has, how it disrupts the education. Listen, not everybody agrees on every aspect of this bond. Not everybody agrees on every bill that Senator Aguilar votes for or that passes out of legislature. The point is that there's such a great diverse area of need that we've got to put together a proposal, and we couldn't wait longer than 4 years. The oversight that was on the 2008 bond was so good that they came in $100 million under budget and were able to appropriate that money to other needs from the bond. And then before then, the 2003 bond. So this is the world that we live in, where we have to go every 4 years. If we stop that process, and if we fail a bond in Denver, then the repercussions, I think, are more than maybe some of the people who are opposing it would imagine.
So we went way over, it's 8:20, but I would bet you anything, both these people would be willing to answer questions. So I want to let those of you who had planned to leave at 8 go ahead and leave. And I invite both Tyler and Arturo to please stay here and answer any of your questions, if you don't mind. And let me just make one last announcement. I apologize for the noise, the cold, the hot. I think I found a venue I will not use again for a town hall. So thank you all for coming and being so patient with us.
We all knew where it was.
I know.